In a small, peaceful village nestled among green mountains, there lived a 25-year-old young man named David. On the outside, David looked just like anyone else in the village, but deep inside his mind there was always a storm of endless thoughts. Each day, David's mind was filled with a constant stream of ideas and worries. Memories of mistakes from the past often returned, making him feel regretful and sad. At the same time, fears about the future kept appearing, leaving him feeling restless and uneasy. Because of this, his mind was always tense and exhausted. Nighttime was the most difficult period for David. When the whole village fell into quiet sleep under a sky full of stars, he would lie awake staring into the darkness, unable to make his mind stop thinking. The more he tried to silence his thoughts, the louder they seemed to become. His mind felt like a crowded marketplace where countless voices never stopped speaking. Over time, this constant noise made David feel completely worn out. The small joys of life slowly disappeared, and sometimes he realized that he had even forgotten how it felt to truly smile. One day, while speaking with a traveler passing through the village, David heard about a wise old man who lived on a distant hill. People said that the old man had once been a famous psychologist in the city who helped many people find peace within their minds. In his later years, the old man left the noisy city life and chose to live close to nature in a quiet mountain village. Occasionally, people still traveled from far away to seek his advice. The story sparked a small light of hope in David's heart. He began to believe that perhaps this old man could help him discover the peace he had been searching for. After thinking for a while, David decided to begin the journey. He wanted to meet the old man, hoping that the trip might help him find a way to calm the chaos inside his mind. After many days walking across long and rough roads, David finally arrived at the small village on the hillside. The atmosphere there was unusually quiet. Green trees swayed gently in the wind, and birds sang softly in the peaceful afternoon. After asking a few villagers for directions, David found the small house of the wise old man. The house was simple, covered with vines and wildflowers. On the porch, the old man sat quietly with his eyes half closed, as if enjoying the calm beauty of nature. David approached slowly, feeling both nervous and hopeful. He bowed politely and said sincerely, "Sir, my mind is always full of chaotic thoughts. I cannot stop thinking about the past, and I constantly worry about the future. I feel very tired. I just want to find a little peace inside my heart. Can you help me?" The old man slowly opened his eyes. A gentle and peaceful smile appeared on his face. He looked at David for a moment, as if he could see everything inside the young man's mind. Then he stood up and said softly, "If you wish to find peace, first help me with a small task." He led David to a small yard behind the house. The old man picked up a glass and filled it with water until it reached the very top. The water level was so high that even the smallest movement could cause it to spill. He handed the glass to David and said, "Take this glass of water and walk from here to the end of the village, then come back. But remember one thing, you must not spill even a single drop." David was surprised by the strange request, but he nodded in agreement. Carefully holding the glass, he began to walk. The village road was quite busy. Some people were chatting, others were selling goods, children were running and playing, and a few dogs barked loudly along the roadside. Yet David paid no attention to any of it. His eyes remained fixed on the glass of water in his hands. Each step was slow and careful, as if the entire world now existed only inside that fragile glass. David continued walking slowly along the small village path. Both of his hands held the glass tightly, so carefully that he barely dared to breathe. Every step was calculated, because even the slightest mistake could cause the water to spill. The road remained lively. Shopkeepers called out to passing customers. Children laughed as they played near the road, and dogs barked at strangers walking by. But none of these sounds seemed to exist in David's world at that moment. His attention stayed locked on the glass. His mind thought about nothing except keeping the surface of the water calm. Step by step, he walked as if balancing on a thin line. After a long distance, David finally reached the end of the village. He turned around and slowly walked back to the old man's house. When he arrived, he sighed with relief and handed the glass back. "Sir, I did it. I didn't spill a single drop." The old man smiled and gently nodded. While you were walking, did you see the children playing by the road? Did you hear the dogs barking or people calling to each other? David looked surprised and shook his head. No, sir, I didn't see or hear anything. I was only focused on the glass of water. The old man smiled kindly again. That is exactly what I wanted you to understand. When your mind is completely focused on one thing in the present moment, the noise and unnecessary thoughts disappear. David stood silently for a few seconds. At that moment, he began to understand the lesson the old man was teaching him. The old man continued, when you live fully in the present moment, your mind becomes quiet. The past will no longer disturb you, and the future will no longer cause fear. That is where true peace exists. David remained still after hearing those gentle words. Something inside his mind began to clear. The old man looked at him kindly and said, you see, when you focused completely on the glass of water, your mind became calm. You were not thinking about the past, and you were not worried about the future. You were simply living in the present moment. David nodded softly. During the entire walk, he truly had not thought about the things that once made him sad or anxious. All of his attention had been placed on keeping the water from spilling. The old man slowly walked a few steps across the yard and continued speaking. Many people allow their minds to run constantly toward the past, or rush ahead into the future. They think too much, worry too much, and because of that, they lose the peace that already exists within them. He paused, looking toward the distant mountains. But peace is not somewhere far away. It already lives inside every person. We simply make our minds so noisy that we cannot feel it. These words stayed in David's thoughts for a long time. For the first time, he realized that the peace he had always searched for was not somewhere outside, but within his own mind. If he could learn to focus on the present moment, just as he had while holding the glass of water, his worries about the past and future would slowly fade. David bowed his head and thanked the old man with deep gratitude. As the sun slowly set behind the hills and the sky turned into the warm colors of sunset, David left the small house and began the journey back to his village. But this time, he was no longer the young man with a chaotic mind. Something inside him had changed. He had learned how to keep his mind calmer in life. As he walked down the path leading home, the sky glowed orange with the evening sunset. The soft light covered the hills and fields around him, creating a peaceful scene he had rarely noticed before. David no longer walked in a hurry. His steps were slower and lighter. He felt the cool breeze across his face, heard birds returning to their nests, and listened to leaves rustling in the wind. Before, these simple things had always been hidden beneath the noise of his thoughts. But now, everything felt different. David began to understand that the human mind is like the glass of water the old man gave him. When we try to focus on too many things at once, the mind becomes confused and tired. But when we focus on the present moment, everything becomes clearer and calmer. He remembered the old man's words. Peace is not something we must search for far away. It already exists within each of us, waiting for us to return to the present moment and feel it. These thoughts made David feel lighter. For the first time in a long while, his mind was no longer pulled back by past mistakes or pushed forward by uncertain fears. Instead, he simply walked, breathed, and noticed the road before him. When David finally returned to his village, he realized that the journey had changed him deeply. He was still the same person, living in the same familiar place, but inside his mind something had shifted. Now, whenever chaotic thoughts appeared, he knew what to do. He would pause, return to the present moment, just like when he held the full glass of water. And within those simple moments, David slowly began to discover the peace he had been searching for all along. After returning from his journey to meet the wise old man, David's life gradually began to change. Everything around him remained the same: the small village, the familiar roads, and the friendly neighbors. Yet inside his mind, a new sense of peace slowly grew. In the past, David often allowed his thoughts to drift between old memories and worries about things that had not yet happened. A single thought could lead to many others, leaving him feeling tired and lost. But now, whenever he noticed his mind becoming restless, he remembered the lesson of the glass of water. He would pause, take a deep breath, and focus on the present moment. Sometimes he simply listened to the wind passing through the trees. Sometimes he watched the sun slowly setting beyond the fields. These small moments made his mind feel lighter. Gradually, David realized that peace is not something we must search for somewhere far away. It is like a quiet stream that always flows inside each person. When we slow down and return to the present moment, we can feel it. One afternoon, while sitting on the porch, David saw a group of children playing along the dusty road. Their laughter filled the clear air. He smiled, realizing that he had missed many beautiful moments like this before because of unnecessary thoughts. Now David understood that life is not a series of days meant only for worry. Life is made of the moments happening right in front of us. When we learn to live fully in those moments, the mind becomes calm, just like the still surface of water in the glass. From then on, David no longer tried to run away from his thoughts. Instead, he learned to gently return to the present moment. And within that simplicity, he found a lasting peace for his soul. As time passed, David continued living in his small village. But since his visit to the wise old man, the way he viewed life had completely changed. Before, his days were filled with restless thoughts about the past or worries about the future. Those thoughts were like heavy clouds covering the sky of his mind. But after learning the lesson of living in the present, David created a new habit. Whenever his mind became tangled with worries, he paused. He breathed slowly, observed the world around him, and returned his attention to the moment he was living in. Sometimes it was the sound of birds singing on the roof, the sunlight passing through the trees, or the feeling of his feet touching the familiar road. These small moments helped him realize something important. Most human worries do not exist in the present moment. They come from memories of the past or imagination about the future. When he focused on the present, those thoughts gradually weakened. His mind slowly became quieter. David began to notice the simple joys of daily life. A peaceful morning, a shared meal with family, or watching the sunset behind the hills became more meaningful. He understood that peace does not mean life has no problems. Peace means the mind is no longer controlled by endless thoughts. Just like the glass of water he once carried, if we keep awareness and focus in each moment, the mind becomes still. And when the mind becomes still, we realize that happiness has always been close to us, hidden inside the simplest moments of life. As time continued to pass, the lesson David learned from the wise old man remained with him. It was not a complicated philosophy or a difficult theory. It was a simple truth with the power to change how people see life. David realized that most human anxiety does not come from the outside world, but from the thoughts inside the mind. When people remain trapped in memories of the past or worry about things that have not yet happened, the mind becomes heavy and restless. Before, David believed that in order to feel peaceful, he needed to change something in his life. He thought that only when his problems disappeared would he finally feel calm. But after understanding the lesson of the glass of water, he realized something different. True peace does not depend on external circumstances. Peace begins with the way we use our mind. When a person learns to focus on the present moment, unnecessary thoughts slowly fade away. The past no longer causes regret, and the future no longer creates fear. David began practicing this in his daily life. Whenever he did something, he placed all of his attention on that single activity. When he ate, he focused on the meal. When he walked, he noticed each step he took. These small changes slowly created a big difference inside his mind. He felt calmer, lighter, and happier. David understood that life will never be perfect. There will always be difficulties and unexpected problems. But if the mind remains calm and focused, peace can still exist in any situation. And that became the most important lesson he learned. Peace is not found in the outside world. It already exists inside the mind of every person. After that day, David was no longer the young man constantly pulled into chaotic thoughts. The simple lesson from the wise old man changed the way he saw life. He understood that the peace he had been searching for had never been far away. It had always existed within the human mind. From that moment on, David began to slow down his life. He paid more attention to the moments around him. When he walked along the familiar village road, he felt each step clearly. When he sat under a tree, he listened to the wind and the birds. These simple things once went unnoticed. Now they brought him a deep and quiet peace. David also realized that life will always include problems and challenges. No one can avoid difficulty or control the future completely. But everyone can control how they think and how they live in the present moment. Whenever his mind began to feel tense, David remembered the glass of water he once carried. He paused, took a deep breath, and returned his attention to the present moment. Little by little, his mind became calmer. Over time, David realized that true happiness does not live in grand achievements. It often appears in the smallest moments of everyday life. And when we learn to live fully in the present moment, peace naturally grows within the heart.